So in the previous video, we saw how we could use a little bit of Swift code to display some text in the console when the app was run. That was all well and good, but it didn't allow us to add any kind of interactivity with our app, which is really what we want to use our Swift code for. So here is where we're going to find out how to do that. So first, let's get rid of the elements that we had before and start from scratch. So our aim here is going to be initially adding some text to a label when the button is pressed. So let's start by bringing in our button. And we'll call that add text. And then we'll bring in our label. And for now, I'll just leave it as label. Right, now here is where things are going to get a little bit complicated, so stick with me. So we're going to bring in the assistant editor here, so we can view two things at once. And you can see by default, that's brought up the viewcontroller.swift file for us. If it didn't, then you could just click there and click viewcontroller.swift to make it appear. Now, to make things a bit clearer, I'm going to get rid of the left and right menus. And I'm also going to click this button there to get rid of the view controller scene information there, because we don't need that either. So now we've got our app view on the left and we've got our code on the right. So what I need to do, if I want to make this button interactive, I need to be able to link the button to the code. And in Xcode, what you do is you press Control and then drag from the button to your Swift code. And you need to drag it to somewhere underneath where it says class view controller there. You don't want to drag it outside the class. It has to be inside the class because this is part of the view controller. We're controlling the view here. There we go. So now we've dragged it in, we get a few options. And the first option that we want to change is that we want to change the connection type to an action. Because what we want is to create an action for when this button is tapped. So I'm going to call the name, very simply, button tapped. And notice that I'm using what's called camel case there. So it's all lowercase apart from the first letter of the second word. And if there was a third and a fourth word and fifth word there, we'd capitalize those as well. So that's our standard way of writing names for things in code. That's not specific to Swift. We use it in pretty much every programming language. And then we can leave the type the same and the event is the same as well. And we're not going to mess with the arguments at all. So then we click Connect. And what we've created there is known as an IB action, with IB standing for Interface Builder. And essentially what we've done is we've created a function or method which will happen when this button is tapped. We also have some information about the sender, that is the button itself, the thing that caused the function to happen, but we don't need to worry about that. We'll be using that later on. So a very simple way of looking at this might be to take our print hello world command, and I'm just going to cut that to the keyboard, to the clipboard with Command X, and paste it back with Command V. And now every time the button is tapped, hello world will be printed to the console. So that's the first step of getting some interactivity, that the user is now able to press that button and hello world will appear in the console. Now that's only half of the problem, because of course the user won't actually see any output, but will see it and will know that something is happening there. So I'm actually just going to clear that part to the left so that we've got a bit more room. And then let's have a look. When we tap add text, hello world appears. and we can make that happen as many times as we like. Brilliant. So we've got half of the interaction. We're now doing something when the button is tapped. What we really want to do though is update that label when the button is tapped. So just like we needed a way to get the button in our code, we need to do the same with the label. And we do it in just the same way. So control drag and drag it just under where it says class view controller. And this time the connection is going to be an outlet because we want to be able to refer to this label. We don't want to have an action related to that label. We just want to refer to it so that we can change its value. So I'm just going to call it label. Simple as that, and then connect. There we go. So now I can use the word label to refer to this label here. So here we go. Instead of printing hello world, I want to update the label text. So what I do is I take my label and I want to update the text of the label. So I type label dot text, and then I want to set that equal to something. So I'm going to set that equal to, and sticking with how things are working so far, let's set it to hello world. Simple as that. So we're taking the label that we created up here and we're setting the text of it to hello world inside double quotation marks there. So let's have a look. Now, when we press the button, we should find that the label is updated. All right, let's try it out. Let's tap add text, and there we go. So you can see, unfortunately, it's updated to HEL because I didn't make it wide enough. So let's just quickly widen that label. And while we've got it there, I think I'd quite like to center it. So I'm just going to bring that right menu in, click center, and then get rid of it, and then just move it about so it's nicely centered. And then let's just check again, make sure that we get the full hello world this time. Here we go, add text, hello world. Fantastic. So we're almost all the way there, but there's a third element to the interaction that I want to include, and that is for the user to be able to enter the text that we use on the label. So here, all the user can do is click the button, which is not a great level of interactivity. So I'm going to change things so that they can actually input some text themselves. So firstly, I'm going to move the button down. Then we'll bring in the right menu. And then from the object library down here, I'm going to bring back a text field. And we're just going to bring that into the middle there. And then stretch it out to the edge. So there's plenty of room. And now I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. Control drag to create an outlet for my text field. And I'll call it text field because I'm very unoriginal, and we can leave everything the same. Again, it's an outlet rather than an action because what I want to do is get the value of the text field. Okay. So now I can get the value of the text field by using text field. So what I want to do is set the label text to text field dot text. Simple as that. So this will now set the label text to whatever the text of the text field is, which means it will set the label to whatever the user has entered into the box. And now we've got the very beginnings of true user interaction because we're grabbing a value from where the user has entered some information. And then when we're tapping the button, we're updating the label with that value. So let's test it out. I'm just going to tap in there and type "Hi Rob" just to shake things up a bit. See, my text is doing something slightly odd there. Hopefully yours isn't doing that. And then add text, and there we go. So now we have our true interaction that the user is able to enter something and then tap a button and then update the label. All right, now we did quite a lot there. So I'm going to set you a challenge to more or less recreate what we did. I'm going to delete all that code and delete all of the labels. And so the challenge is very simply to recreate this. So this is the mini app that we're going to create. We've got a label here that asks, "What is your name?" And then the user is invited to enter their name. And then when they press the submit button, we're going to say "Hi" and then whatever their name is. So I'm just going to type Jim to test it out. Let's use the prediction to capitalize that and then tap submit and we get "Hi Jim." So you're going to need a total of 3 labels there. One for the "What is your name?", another for the "Hi", and a third for Jim. And it is unfortunate that we get a "Hi" on its own at the beginning of the app. That's not ideal, but it's early days for us as app developers at the moment. So for now, we'll just leave that in and use this as an opportunity to practice setting up IB outlets and IB actions and making our apps interactive. Time to pause the video and give it a shot. Good luck. All right, hope you managed that. It was definitely the trickiest challenge we've had so far. I'm going to start by bringing in the first of my 2 labels. We'll put it just at the left there. And we're just going to ask, "What is your name?" Oh, I'll drag that around. There we go. Then we'll have a text field. Just going to go just underneath. As usual, I'm going to drag it all the way along. And we'll have a placeholder of "enter your name," just to make it really clear what we want the user to do. Next, we'll have a button which invites the user to submit. And then we're going to have another label. So this first label is going to say "Hi, comma," and I want it to be over on the left. And then we're going to drag in another label next to that, which is where the name is going to go. So I'm going to leave the word label there for the moment, and then later on we'll get rid of it. Okay, so now the fun bit. Let's drag in the bits that we're interested in. So I'm going to start by control dragging the text field to our Swift code. And I'll call this name field. Connect. And then I'm going to drag the label, or control drag the label, I should say. I'll call that name label and connect. Normally I do my IB outlets before my IB actions just to keep them together, but you don't have to. And finally, I'm going to control drag the submit button. Don't forget to change the connection to an action. And I'll call this submit button tapped. And we'll leave everything else the same. Okay, so all I need to do is set the label text to be equal to the name that the user has entered. So this is just the same as how we did it a moment before. So we're going to use name label dot text and set that equal to name field dot text. Simple as that. And then a couple of quick things here. I'm going to stretch out the label so we've got plenty of room if it goes too far. And I'm just going to get rid of the text there. So as I mentioned, this does mean that we have a kind of floating high at the beginning, which isn't great. We'll find out how to deal with something like that very soon. But for now, we'll just put up with that because this really is just an example to get to grips with using these IB outlets and IB actions. So let's see if it works. I'm going to tap in the text field to enter my name. And then let's use the software keyboard this time. So R, O, B, and then tap, submit, and there we go. Hi, Rob. Okay, I hope you managed to do that. And if so, congratulations, because that's your first fully functioning iPhone app. And that takes us almost to the end of this section where we're going to make our cat years app. But first, we're just going to see how to make our apps a little bit prettier by adding images to them. And we'll see how to do that in the next video.